Why you shouldn't mix genres in your first novel and how it can hurt you if you do. We'll be looking into that and more, and we're starting right now. Take a moment and think about if you worked in a video store like Blockbuster. Imagine if you had to put away videos like a horror movie, like The Exorcist. You would know exactly where to put it. If there was a movie like A Fist Called Wanda, you would know it goes into a comedy. If it was Terms of Endearment, you know it was a drama, and you would put it in the drama section. But what if you come across a movie that was a comedy, horror, romance, and western all in one? What category would you put that in? Chances are you would leave that to the last, because it would confuse you. You wouldn't know where to place it. It's the same thing when you write a novel. If you're mixing 4 or 5 different genres into your novel, it makes it very difficult for the publishers to market. Imagine if you went into a bookstore right now and your dream novel was in that store for sale. Where would you go looking for it? What category? What section? Western, science fiction, horror, drama? When you're a writer and you're just starting out, it's really easy for a publisher to promote your book when it's one genre, one age group. The problem is that when you submit a book to a literary agent that's a complete mix of 4 or 5 different genres, it's difficult for the literary agent to promote your book to a publishing house, because some publishing houses will focus only on one genre, whereas another publishing house will focus on a different genre. And if your book is made up of 4 or 5 different genres, well, who does that literary agent send that book to? Because if it starts off as science fiction and then changes to Western, and they submit it to a publishing house that specializes in science fiction, well, they're going to read it and they're going to love it. And then all of a sudden it becomes a Western. And the publishing house is like, we can't sell this. A lot of amateurs like to mix genres, thinking they're going to appeal to everybody of all age groups, that the book is going to sell in the tens of millions because it appeals to everybody. The fact is, when you try to appeal to everybody, you end up appealing to nobody. Because people who like science fiction, they're going to want to read science fiction. People who like westerns are going to read westerns. If somebody likes horror, they're going to want to read a horror novel. But if you start mixing all of these genres together, the people who like science fiction are not going to want to read the western part of it. And you're mixing these all together, you end up turning off everybody. Is it possible to mix genres? Well, maybe if you're an established author whose name can sell anything. Because even Stephen King, in the middle of writing horror novels, he released a book called Eyes of the Dragon, which is a fantasy novel. But he could do so because he was Stephen King. His name sells the book. If you're just starting out, it's really difficult for your name to sell your book. The book itself has to sell itself. And when you're one genre, it's really easy to market a book that way. But when you start mixing them, you confuse the reader, you confuse the literary agent, and you confuse the publishing houses, and even the employees won't know which section to put your book. It's like the people at Blockbuster not knowing where to put a video, because it's a complete mix of so many genres. If I were to walk into a bookstore right now and I wanted to find your book, what section would I go to? Would you recommend Western, science fiction? Problem is, you can't be in every single bookstore guiding people. The book itself has to sell itself. If a literary agent gives you suggestions on making your book one genre, they're not doing this to insult you. They're actually trying to help you get published. Chances are, if you mix 4 or 5 genres into one, and that's your first book ever, the literary agent will look at it and say, could you focus on one? Now, you might get upset and say, it has to be this way. Chances are the literary agent might flat out just reject you and give you advice on, hopefully you can find another agent. But you want to make sure your book gets published. And if the literary agent is offering you advice, they're not doing this to be mean. They're doing this, in fact, because they want to help you get published. And by focusing on one genre, that's actually going to go a long way instead of trying to appeal to everybody and end up appealing to nobody. Because literary agents get submissions every day. And if they have two to choose from, yours, which is a complete mix of 4 or 5 different genres, and another book, which is just one genre, because you have to remember, literary agents are putting their reputation on the line every time they send a book to a publishing house. If they send a book to a publishing house and it gets rejected over and over and over again, eventually the publishing house is going to lose respect for the literary agent. The literary agent does not want this. They want to submit a novel and have it accepted over and over and over again, because then that makes them look good in the eyes of the publishing houses. If your book is a mix of 4 or 5 genres, and there's another book that's just one, the literary agent is probably going to go with that one that they feel safe with. The one book that has one genre, who they can send it to the right publishing house, and the publishing house might look at it and maybe 50-50, they might like it, may not, but at least it's one genre. Because if you write a book that has 4 or 5 different genres in one, the literary agent is really putting their reputation and name on the line to submit your book to a publishing house that might get rejected right off the bat. And it hurts the literary agent's name if that happens. And it's also important to remember that publishing houses are putting their own company on the line every time they write a book, every time they publish a book. It's their company. They're investing a lot of money in your book. And it's very difficult for an author to get their book read and sold if you're brand new, because the general public, we like reading books from established, well-known authors. Getting your foot in the door is not easy. If the publishing houses are going to spend a lot of money on you, they're going to want that money back, because if it doesn't happen, they go bankrupt. They close stores and their employees now are unemployed. If a publishing house is going to invest money in you, they're going to want to place a safe bet. And if you have 4 or 5 different genres in your book, it's going to be difficult to sell, difficult to market. And publishing houses are taking a risk by investing a lot of money in you for a book that may not sell. And if your book doesn't sell, and 2 or 3 other books that they release that year don't sell, that could be the end of that company. It doesn't matter how successful a publishing house was 10 or 20 years ago. It's all about today. If they invest money in you and your book doesn't sell, that's money out of their pocket that's not coming back. And it could cause them to close their doors. Once you become established and well known as a writer, well, then things can change for you. If you have that idea in your mind for a book that's 4 or 5 different genres, it doesn't mean you have to throw it away for good. It simply means you can put it off to the side temporarily. Write a book that's one genre. Play it safe at first. Become established, well known, so to a point where your name alone sells books. So that way, when you are famous, now you can start looking into the idea of your book that's mixed genres being put out there and sold because of your name. And that dream novel of yours that's a mix becomes a reality. But if you submit it as your first novel, it might get rejected because literary agents and publishing houses are nervous of taking a risk. If you like watching this video, be sure to check out my website. I'll leave a link down below. And you can go to my site and see the countless blogs that I have to offer you on how you can become a great writer. Because I want to help you get published. I want to see your book in a bookstore, and I want to read it. And if there's anything that I can do to help, that's what I want to do. So be sure to check out my website. And if you enjoyed watching this video, well, I'm sure you will enjoy watching my other video on how to have a great villain for your novel. In fact, I'm going to leave a link right here for you so you can click on that video right now and start watching.